Amnesty International has recorded, I think, that 608 landmine casualties took place in 2022 and more in 2023. Mines, it says, are scattered across the territory of Ukraine, previously and currently occupied by Russian troops. They are a daily deadly threat to civilians. Some have been deliberately placed in civilian homes where they maim and kill, said Patrick Thompson, the Ukraine researcher at Amnesty International. There is clear evidence that Russia is dropping mines that sort of explode, mines that scatter from the tip of a missile. Missiles can be used to launch mines into an area, and I think it's important that this is established now, and I'll come to the rest of this in a few minutes. But there is, I can only find, by looking on the internet, I can find one repeated report about butterfly mines being used by Ukraine. And it is possible, more than possible. But what is extraordinary is that this is peddled so much on social media when there is indiscriminate use of these weapons, already well documented, from Russian troops dropping these mines indiscriminately into civilian areas. The Russians have these huge stockpiles of weapons. Well, they have significantly less now, after Ukraine has successfully targeted and obliterated what I think is now judged this morning is judged to be 3.5 months worth of munitions lost in the last few weeks. Also, the German reporters for DW have concluded that there isn't evidence that Ukraine has been using butterfly mines. So I think let's go to a post which somebody has left. I've been in a quandary for quite a while now about whether the correct word that I should be using is ghosting or gaslighting, and I'm still likely to get the two confused. But Cyber Vigilante says it was Ukraine that did the butterfly mines against the Donbas. You need to do more research on the actual cause of that war, the US. Well, it's very interesting. It's an interesting claim. I think it's fundamentally wrong, but it is an interesting claim. And what I think we're doing here is witnessing real-time Russian propaganda, or the effects of Russian propaganda in real time, because I've now seen, I think, 4 or 5 claims that it's Ukraine which has been littering its own soil with butterfly mines, whereas in fact there's a lot of evidence that Russia has been doing this routinely, and people actually believe the propaganda. There are also instances of Russians using phosphorus, dropping phosphorus, which ignites, well documented in Bakhmut and elsewhere, and indeed gas, poison gas, and this has led to Britain now producing, manufacturing gas masks to deal with the problem. But as ever, it's the overwhelming use of these weapons against civilians that needs attention, and the gaslighting by Russian propagandists doesn't help to eradicate the problem. This is more of this sort of evasive equivocation that is peddled routinely by the bot factories, the bot farms, initially sort of financed by Prigozhin in St. Petersburg, But they have spread, and they do a lot of damage. There's some very specific examples of mines that were laid in Izium, dropped in Izium, often dropped from the air and just scattered. And the Ukrainian troops have been trying to clear those mines. And the area around the Zaporizhia power plant is heavily mined, which makes it almost impossible for the Ukrainians to recapture that power plant, leaving it as a boiling weapon that can be turned into the most spectacular and terrifying nuclear accident at any moment like that by Putin and his cohorts. And then they can say, oh well, that was just waiting to happen. That's because of Ukraine. I think in the next month or so, we need to be terribly aware of that power plant, and we need to be terribly aware of the sort of disinformation which is being peddled by people on the internet, and peddled directly from Russia. This idea that because Moscow is accused of doing something, it says, oh yeah, Ukraine did it. This is about petal mines, and the significant point is that Russia has not signed the mine ban treaty. So it becomes much harder to enforce complaints about the illegal use of these mines. And Human Rights Watch has conducted interviews with several civilians in Izium, but we know that Izium was a place. So the newspaper references that suggest that this is something that Ukrainian forces have done. This is in an area that is known to have been mined by Russia, and the butterfly mines are prohibited in the 1997 Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Treaty, of which Ukraine, not Russia, is a signatory. And I think that's an important detail to remember. Evidence of Russia using phosphorus munitions in Ukraine includes several documented instances in 2022 in Mariupol, for example. The Times and Medusa reported use of these munitions, which caused severe burns and fires. Vuleda, 2023, there's film footage of this. In Bakhmut in 2023, again, there's video footage of phosphorus munitions being used, and indeed, Caleb Robertson has witnessed this. So I've spoken to somebody who has first-hand information about the phosphorus weapon. As for gas, again, I've been speaking to people who have been telling me how they've been gassed in a trench. They have to leave the trench and then they are shot or shot at. The people I've spoken to, thankfully, have managed to escape. But it's a real problem. Russia is using banned weapons, and it's not abiding by the international conventions. And then it is relying on the gullibility of social media, and I'm being as positive as I can in my assessment, to spread this gaslighting to spread this nonsense that it's Ukraine which is at fault, not Russia. As for the phosphorus thing, I think there's evidence that Ukraine has used it as well, but it's used it specifically on military targets, and it's used it relatively sparingly. Russia uses it indiscriminately, and it's a tool of terror, and it's very clear. As for the investigations, the Ukraine is sort of basically stands by the principle that we won't say anything until the end of hostilities. That's what the Deputy Defense Minister Alexander Polishchuk has said. I'm not sure when he said that. In November last year, I think. He said that Ukraine abided by the international conventions, that it didn't use PFM mines during the armed conflict. But he said that before the end of the war and the restoration of our sovereignty and territorial integrity, a proper investigation cannot take place. He made it quite clear that the massive use of anti-personnel mines by Russian units against Ukrainian civilians was already documented. I don't know whether we can be any clearer than that.